and I had met briefly before, but we really started getting into conversation at Danielle Martin's event recently.
Correct.
Which, first of all, how was that experience? For anybody who missed out on that, that was a great conversation.
That was a can't miss. I didn't know what Danielle was putting together. She'd been talking about it. I don't even know, for like a good part of like 9 to 12 months about what her vision for that was. And she's got a big vision for what she wants to accomplish over the next 2-3 years. And so I got to see a glimpse of that and got to be a part of that. And to have all those other people sharing tidbits and of what they're going through, how they've come through, and where they're going was absolutely phenomenal. And the feedback that I got from everybody as I was listening, they just kept on saying, when's the next one? When's the next one?
See, and it's interesting because not only were there a pretty decent-sized group of people there, they were all really plugged in and really engaged. I'm seeing that more, not only in person, but just in online spaces, that sort of, the self-improvement, whatever you want to call it, just sort of, making the most out of life in this moment is really big. What do you think what do you think is behind the spike in interest in that?
Spike in interest in the self-improvement.
Yeah.
I think the dissatisfaction with where people are at. Now what's interesting is I'm a big fighter against people watching too much TV, people watching too much of the media, people spending too much time on social media. And so what's happened is, which is interesting that you say that, is that people have become extremely dissatisfied with their life because they're watching other people live theirs, right? And so it's a bad thing that they're dissatisfied from what I would say watching other people's fake lives, but in a way it's caused them to look for something more.
Yeah. There is, I think it was Brett Weinstein and Heather Heyer talked about this. Heather Heyer or Hying? No, it's Hying. Talked about this. There's a perfectly reasonable biological driver behind this. So, in the early days of man, if you were in agricultural society, if you were growing your food to survive and so was your neighbor next to you across the road, if you in a season yielded 1,000 crops and he yielded 10,000, it makes total sense to look at that and go, well, he knows something I don't know.
Right.
I should keep a close eye on him. Whatever he's doing is working. Now, the problem is, that works for your neighbor who's in the same situation, doing the same thing in the same climate, in the same environment, with the same resources.
Right.
That doesn't work when you are looking at an infinite number of people through a television, and most of them aren't actually real, through things like video editing, manipulation of writing and stuff like that. So unfortunately, it's taken on a really sinister version of a perfectly natural biological driver. And it's why comparison is the thief of joy more now, perhaps than ever.
That's right. That's right. And so people, let's say that there's a renaissance in the personal development, and not even, I don't know, I call it more self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right. So go read the people that are in the space of the personal development to ask, because they're going to cause you to ask questions of yourself that you're not going to think to ask. Right. So when we start to ask those questions, we will start to answer them correctly as long as we keep down the path of that awareness. But then, and I think they shared this at Danielle's deal as well, is that you want to put yourself and surround yourself around people that are like-minded, because once you start having the ideas of becoming self-aware, of becoming more, if you're involved with folks that aren't ready for that, what will end up happening, if you've ever heard the phrase crabs in a bucket, right? So you try to get out and you get pulled back down, right? So that's where people have to be really careful as they are looking to make that push of betterment, that sometimes the people that surround them, they leave. And that's where you get some sandpaper where people are like, oh, you think you're better than us.
I think I've told this story before, maybe not on air. I don't think I mentioned it to you, but there was an interview with Tony Hawk at one point. And of course, everybody is understanding how ubiquitous the name Tony Hawk is at this point. But before, there wasn't even any skateboarder who was like that. Skateboarding was such a niche thing. And when he was street skating with his friends when he was a teenager, they would talk to him all the time about, oh boy, Tony, one day you're gonna make it huge. You're gonna make skateboarding a household name. You're gonna do this incredible thing. He gets some sponsors. He gets to an event. He's sponsored by McDonald's, and the same people say, I can't believe you sold out.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's something that my wife and I had to fight against a long time ago when we started separating from our current environment so we could be focused on ourselves and our growth. And this is going on like 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
And we heard that for so long. A lot of our friends, they would really ridicule us for not wanting to hang out. But at that point in time in our lives, it was, let's go to the bar, and it was like drinking and like all that kind of stuff. And we were just done with that phase of our lives.
Sure.
So we had to separate until we could come back and hang out without being influenced.
Yeah, absolutely. What was sort of the nexus behind, like, what inspired you to pursue this kind of lifestyle?
So, believe it or not, I went to one of those events that you get invited to and you don't know quite what it is.
Yeah.
And it was a network marketing event. It was Amway. It was an Amway event. And so this is like 25 years ago. And so I get invited to this event. They are talking about really expensive toilet paper.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm not going to buy toilet paper that's like 4 times as much. But they did offer a book and tape, like a monthly book and tape.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't know, I'll do that. I've never, I was able to get out of high school and college with reading one book the entire time.
Yeah.
And, but when I got those books and tapes, they made it for people like me. They little skinny, tiny books and tapes, something I could listen to.
Yeah.
And so that caused my mind to start thinking differently. And one of the books that I read was 1 Minute Millionaire. And her whole preface in that book was, it's not really about becoming a millionaire 1 minute. It's that you can change your mindset in 1 minute, start thinking like a millionaire. And so I started asking questions like, why do I have to go to work 5 days a week and only have 2 days a week off?
Yeah.
Why do I have to ask for vacation when it's my life? And so that's when that pursuit of learning really took off, where Evie and I wanted to live a different life. We wanted to pay off our house. We wanted to do all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest, I think, fundamental shifts in mindset that happens, is that it's not about making money exactly as much as it's not having to give away your time.
Correct.
Basically, I don't want to say against your will, but that's kind of what it is. You know, you're talking about 5 out of 7 days of your life, you know,
right.
And I think that the great pursuit of wealth isn't exactly a pursuit of material goods. It's a pursuit of escaping the need to give 5/7 of your life away to another person.
Right. Well, you know, in the books, all the books say you're either going to build somebody else's dreams or you're going to build your own.
Yeah.
So most people are spending 5 days a week building somebody else's dreams.
Right.
So at a very young age, Evie and I were just done with that. And people, again, some of those same friends and the crowds were just like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, you guys are not in the right mind. But I'll tell you what, of us going into our dream manufacturing mode, and we said we're going to pay off our first house we bought over by Washburn. We built a plan. We were going to pay off our first house. I went and told, I didn't know I shouldn't have done this at this because I was just over exuberant. And I said, we're going to go pay off our house in 5 years. And I had one of my bosses laugh at me, and then she made fun of me. Every customer that came in, I worked at a bank. And so every person that came in, she was like, oh, this guy, he doesn't know. He's so naive. He's so young. He doesn't know. And all that did was put fuel to the fire. So we just got to work. But I mean, we did. So she was right. We didn't pay off our house in 5 years. We paid it off in 2.5.
Ooh, there you go. There you go.
But what we did is we do things, and we still have the same mentality, the same hustle. So we dug in trash and alleys and took out vacuums and furniture. This is back before the internet, as far as like Craigslist and all that kind of stuff. And we had a yard sale every weekend. We worked. We went to school full time. We worked full time, and we worked a part-time job, and we're trash diggers. And so that's what we did. Paid it off in 2.5 years. But
wow.
The question is how many people today will fight for that dream of freedom from what I and again, I believe that there are great employers. So right,
sure.
And employers need employees, right? But not everybody's wired that way. So what kind of life do you want to? What kind of life do you want to live? And just Evie and I did not want to be. We're just stubborn like that. We just didn't want to be told when and how to show up.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. You talk about having done this sort of before the internet, like you were saying. Do you think that kind of financial freedom is more available now than it used to be? Do you think this is something that most anybody could achieve?
Absolutely. 100%. I believe anybody can achieve it.
Yeah.
It's a lack of intention and discipline.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that it is a lack of intention and discipline. I also think maybe first and foremost it's a lack of inspiration, and that being the positive belief in a potential future is how we talk about inspiration. People just don't think they could do it. and this is sort of speaking from experience, and not only sort of the perspective I used to have, but the perspective that that people I know have, where, oh, there's a type of person who gets to be a millionaire, and then there's us, and we're normal, and what we're supposed to do is we punch a time card, and we'll get to retire, hopefully at 65. I really hope Social Security is still there when that happens. But that's us. That's the class or the group or whatever term you want to put it. That's where we're at.
Right.
And I wonder why that is. Is that effective advertising? Is that just years of parents telling children that? Or I wonder what's behind that limiting belief.
Well, I mean, my opinion is that people don't know that they've been, assimilated to slavery?
Sure.
Right. So if you look at the average American and they're spending an average of 4.5 hours on TV, Hulu, Netflix, whatever it is a day, they are being assimilated to the messaging that's given to them. Mm-hmm. And so the messaging is like, if you, I don't know what it was, like 6 or 7 years ago, I was watching the NCAA tournament, and there was a Cadillac commercial. And the Cadillac commercial kept on coming on and on, a sweet Cadillac, nighttime, driving through a tunnel. It would be all black and then black out, and show the lights, black out, show the lights, black out. And this whole messaging was, it just said, you, black out, deserve, black out, this, right? So people watch this messaging all the time. Now I feel like I need to go get this Cadillac for only $585.
That sounds like how a sci-fi movie would depict, it
is.
Subliminal messaging.
Hello, we live in a sci-fi movie.
I think we do.
like watch the sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
Like we are living the documentary. This is like the Truman Show. If you didn't realize that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so funny, and this has been a potentially frustrating topic for me in the past, but it's one of those things that once you realize that you have a hard time understanding how you didn't understand it. People watch media all day, and I'm not. I include myself in people. Right. I'm not separate from that. But people will get up and check social media. Then while they're getting ready in the morning, they're watching TV. Then while they're at work, they're scrolling their phone. And when they get home in the evening, whether it's fiction or the news or whatever you want to call it, you're imbibing media. And they think, well, that doesn't affect how I live. I'm like, you're getting nothing but sustained messaging from
absolutely
people, entities, corporations, groups, whatever you want to call it. It's interesting too, the old adage about if the product is if you get something for free, then you're the product. You think about social media or anything like that. It's like, why is it that Facebook made this incredibly awesome website and just lets you use it for free? They're just that nice,
right?
Same thing with cable advertisers. It's like, no, we just want you to see this commercial that we spent a lot of money on, just because we hope you like it,
right?
It's there might be a little bit of evidence that influences you to a degree. That might be something to think about.
It absolutely
and
does.
At this volume, I really think that is a major driver in terms of what people not only believe can be true of their life, but what is true of existence.
Yeah. Well, look at the documentary Matrix.
Yes.
So that movie, he lays down in a chair, and what does he do? They take that thing and they shove it in the back of his head, and he gets programmed.
Yeah.
Right. So he gets programmed in 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. Right. What we do is we get programmed 4.5 hours at a time.
Yep.
By who we hang out with, what we read, what we listen to, what we watch.
Yeah.
Right. And so when people start to understand that they're being programmed, is when they start to break free. Also, what they say in Matrix is that about becoming slaves, right? About becoming slaves to what somebody else has plans for our life, right? Because they don't know how to think about how to think, because when this goes all the way back to your question about why do people not think that they can do?
Yeah.
Well, the media, the marketing, all the stuff doesn't want them to, because once they stop being consumers, they've lost their revenue.
Yeah. Well, same kind of thing. It's like if major advertiser businesses were telling everybody that they should go and start their own business, then who would work for them?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
I think that there are cynical aspects to maybe this conversation, and you and I actually touched on that a little bit at the Danielle Martin event about this idea of sort of realizing I don't want to put it this negatively, sort of realizing how bad it is, how bad your position is, or how bad sort of your station in life is, how you have to do that before you can make a change. It's sort of like, to a more extreme example, in 12-step, you have to say you're an addict before you can begin the rest of the 12 steps.
Right.
I wonder, and this was, I think, the nexus of our conversation today was sort of this interesting idea. How should people stop from feeling too down on themselves in that initial sort of inventory? You know, it's like because this, I'll tell you where I was at. So when I was 23 or 24, I was 370 pounds. I was not doing well in college. I was smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day. I didn't work out. I would spend most of my time sitting in a dark apartment eating fast food. And at one point, I sort of, literally, I would turn the lights off and close all the blinds and stuff like that. I lived by myself. It was comfortably the worst year of my whole life. But that's a hell of an inventory to take. You know, you're like, man, I have like 7 life changes that I need to make before I'm out of the bottom. How would you suggest people stop from beating themselves up about being in that spot?
Well, one is just awareness that you are where you are because you're supposed to be there. That's acceptance.
Sure.
So when you said like a 12-step system, right? That's because they are accepting where they are to begin with, right? Then you just have to identify where you want to go, and then you start taking the 1% steps in that direction.
Yeah.
So when I typically work with people, I make sure that there's like a life category wheel, right? And I think I mentioned that during the Daniel Martin event, is you just identify where you're at. It doesn't mean, and the reason why people think that they're so bad, it's because, again, what are they doing? They're comparing themselves against what they see, right? So one of the first things that I talk to people about is turning off the noise, right? So they got to get clarity on, in reality, where they're at, and then they have to start to develop where they want to go.
Yeah.
Now, as they get going, where they want to go will change because they can't see. It's like heading from Topeka to like Breckenridge. Like there's a lot of hills and stuff. We can't see the mountains, even though everybody thinks it's flat. But we can't see the mountains, right? Yeah. But the closer we get to the mountains and we hit that crest as we're coming up into Colorado, all of a sudden you can see some mountains, right? Yeah. So people have to just take the steps in faith of where they want to go. Yeah. Right. We can't see the mountains from Topeka, but I can tell you we've been there enough times now that we know with faith that we're going to see them. Right. We know other people before us, before we ever went to the mountains, and they gave us the directions. Say, if you follow these directions, you will get to the mountains. Yeah. Right. So in the same way, if you believe that there is a mountain there, then take steps of faith that are going to get you there, but also knowing that along that journey, there are going to be pit stops. There could be flat tires. There could be a breakdown. The road to where you want to go is never perfect, but that's part of the growth because it's there. That's there I heard this yesterday or this morning. It's obstacles are there to elevate. Yeah. But so many people choose to use the obstacles to eliminate. Right. So what they have to do is make sure that they understand where they want to go. So if somebody says to me that they're 375 pounds and they want to lose weight, I'm like, okay, great. Let's just lose 2 pounds in the next week. Right. That's it. Right. I was listening to your podcast. With Michael. And I think you were sharing that your goal wasn't to lose 40 pounds. Your goal is to lose 10 pounds. Same thing. Same process. Just what are the activities that I have to do? Look up what result did I get? Do I need to do more or less of what I was doing to get the result I wanted? And that's something that I still am sort of programming into myself, and I'm having more success now than I used to. But I used to say things like, well, I'm a perfectionist. Well, I have high standards, Like when I took that initial inventory, I was like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. Starting right now. I don't smoke anymore. I'm going to lose weight, eat healthy, and start exercising right now. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen like that. And, you give yourself 5 really difficult tasks at the same time. You fail on one, and you're like, oh, this didn't work. Okay, well, I guess that's not going to happen for me then.
And I used to couch that and sort of protect that under, because I would do well for 2 weeks saying, I'm never going to eat anything that has sugar in it ever again. And then that I will last, just through grit in my teeth until somebody's birthday or something.
Right.
And then I feel the need to, depression spiral for 3 or 4 days afterward. And I would sort of defend that within myself by saying, well, I have high standards. That's not high standards. That's cruel. And the reason that's cruel, and what I realized about that is that I would never hold those expectations to anybody else. I would never look at someone I cared about or someone I loved, and if they come to me and they say, hey, I was doing really well on my diet, but I messed up for a meal, I would never look at them and say, you're a failure.
Right.
But that's what I would say to myself.
Yeah.
And that's what so many of us say to ourselves. So it's still a lesson that I had to make that shift for, where, hey, it's okay I didn't lose 100 pounds in a month.
Right.
That's cruel to expect because I am headed in the right direction. I'm stumbling toward the right thing is something that I've said before. And that takes a shift in mindset, because when you realize that you're in a bad spot, it feels like an emergency all of a sudden. It feels like, well, I need to reverse course on what I've been doing, but it took you a lot of years to get where you are.
Yeah. And I think it was in Atomic Habits that I think it was in Atomic Habits where he had said that we live in an app-based culture. We live in a where people are getting results in 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 3 hours. So we see these snippets. Somebody can go through a whole lifestyle change and be magnificent in the course of a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Right? People can make huge transformation in 30 minutes on a TV show.
Yeah.
And so we watch that and then we attribute it to our own life and wonder why we can't get the results.
Yeah.
But if we get rid of all that trash, then what we can do is you can lay out those steps today. When I was in college and my first start on starting to become healthier, because at one point in time I still had gained 50 pounds through college and beginning of marriage, but I was going to stop drinking pop because I was addicted to Mountain Dew. Mm-hmm. And so all I did was I poured out one gulp and then the next day 1 gulp.
Yeah.
Right. So some people will say, well, I'm going to drink the can and then dump the bottom part, but they won't. They'll drink the can.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to eliminate some of the things out of your life first, take it out, but it's just 1%. Now, thank goodness, I was able to get myself weaned off of that Mountain Dew, because I'm telling you, I thought I was dying when we ran out of 3 cases of it, and I just was and I thought I was dying from caffeine and sugar withdrawal. Oh yeah, I had no idea what was going on.
As I said, when I moved into the college dorm at 18, I thought, a great way to make friends is everybody's downstairs smoking cigarettes. So I was like, I'll do that for a semester. And then, and I did that for 6 years. and then I quit that with the vape, and you can get away with that anywhere. So I was vaping at work. I'd vape in the store, and I did that for 4 years, you know? And, it's funny. You really realize you have a problem when you can't find it. Mm-hmm. When you can't find the vape and all of a sudden it's a catastrophe and you're throwing stuff around in your room and stuff, and you kind of look at that and you go, oh, this is an issue. Right. But that's that moment, that sort of, I don't want to call that a bottom because that seems too dramatic, but that moment when you realize that you really have an issue is simultaneously a really low point for yourself, because you get into the how did I let this happen kind of thing. And it's also the moment that the first critical moment that will inspire change has been my experience, and they're still painful. Sure. It's still painful, but it's about using that pain in a way because it's going to be there one way or the other. You can either use it as a club to beat yourself over the head with, or you can use it to jumpstart the direction you want to go.
Yeah. The one thing that I teach people, I just had a conversation with one of our friends on Wednesday. We had her over for some soup. And we were talking about making change in life, and what I gave to her, what I call the transformation, or the transformation change formula. And so it's D times V plus F has to be greater than C. So your dissatisfaction times vision plus your first steps has to be greater than your resistance to change. Okay. So what most people do is they don't acknowledge, number one, how dissatisfied. So you were just talking about being in a situation that you're dissatisfied. So the real question is how dissatisfied are you? Are you dissatisfied level 1, where it's like a tiny little pebble in your shoe and you tend to forget about it throughout the day?
Right.
Or are you absolutely disgusted where your foot hurts so bad it's causing a blister and you know it's bleeding inside your shoe, so you do something about it? Right? And then your vision, are you clear enough with what you want out of your life that those two things, dissatisfaction times vision, are going to drive you to make sure that you're taking the first steps, right? And so those three things have to be greater than your resistance to change, to do nothing. And what I find is that most people won't dig deep enough to admit how dissatisfied they are with their life, because it's easier to cope through being numbed through media, being numbed through alcohol, being numbed through food. And get rid of this, because most people will say, well, this is just the way it is, like you got to pay the bills. You hear that about their money. We just got to pay the bills. That's the reason why I work. It's just people need to get real with themselves, but they're so distracted that they never get to unfold like this dream, this destiny that's beside them. And like Les Brown says, he says that the most wealthy place on the planet is the graveyard, because that's where dreams, ambitions, goals, and inventions and wealth go to die. Because of people's lack of clarity and discipline and vision for what they want in life. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think this is as good a time as any that I want to ask the question that I'm sure you get a million times, where if people are listening to this conversation and maybe had come into it not aware that they had an alternative to that 8 to 5 kind of life, but they don't know where to start. I'm sure that you've been asked that advice a number of times. What's sort of the general answer you give?
Well, I don't give an answer. I ask questions.
There you go. Maybe that's better.
Because so as a coach, so in my own business, I coach, and then I coach professionals around the country. But I always ask questions, because I don't know how to solve the problem unless I know what the problem is. And so people will say, well, I would like not to live that 8 to 5 life, which, I mean, let's be real, like an entrepreneur life is not 8 to 5. Right? It's from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed life, but it's different because it's fulfilling. But the 8 to 5 life is the first thing that I'll ask typically is, tell me about your morning routine. Right? And then they'll be like, well, I get up, I have to be at work at 8, I get up at 7:30, I drink a cup of coffee and I head off, right? Well, that's a disaster of a morning, because usually in there, so they open up their cell phone, they're scrolling Facebook, they're on the toilet watching TikTok, right? And so I find out that, and then I say, okay, well, tell me about your finances. Well, most of Americans spending 105% of what they make. Right? So if you want to do something different, you've got to become someone different. Right? So when we go look at finances, like, a whole lifetime ago, I used to be a financial planner. And when I was a financial planner, people my age, which were 28, 30 at that time, would tell me they didn't have any money. And so I'd say, you're probably right. I wouldn't argue with them, but I usually knew that they didn't know. I'd say, you're probably right. Let's do a 90-day evaluation of your cash flow, right? So then what would happen is I would do that evaluation, and I'm telling you, on average, every single time, they would have $800 to $1,000 that wasn't accounted for in their spending. And it was just, they didn't even know where it went. So what I would do is I would tell them to separate that money, right? Step one is, each time you get paid, I want you to take $400 and have it auto-drafted into your savings account. All of a sudden, they had $800 in their account, and they had no idea how that money got there, right? So when you say, what is the first thing that I would do? Ask the question, because if they want financial freedom, they've got to start paying attention to their finances. If they want time freedom, they got to start paying attention to their time. Those are the two things that people say that they value most, is their finances and their time, but neither one of them they pay attention to. Very rarely do people have a financial budget, and I would say pretty much 0.5% of people actually have a time budget. And time is the only thing that you can spend and never get back and never earn back, right? It's most valuable to us. So that's where I go first, and then it helps me know what to direct them specifically on.
You're touching on an area that I talk about pretty often, mostly because it's something that I've had to sort of get a hold on. And it's about clarity. And a lot of the things that you're talking about are simple, but they're not easy. You know, understanding your finances, understanding your time, taking a real honest look at your life. Those things are potentially simple. You know, just sit down for an hour and look at what you spent this week, you know, something like that. But why is that not easy? I think here's why. At least, you know, I'm projecting. This has been in my experience. My friends know that I have this term called looking at the mail, and here's what I mean by that. So when I was a kid, my school would mail our grade cards home every quarter, and you know, my parents would say throughout the year, "Hey Ryan, how you doing in math class or whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing great." In the back of my head, I know I'm like, "Okay, well, there's a storm brewing at some point."
Right.
So it'd get to sort of that time of the year. Where I didn't know what day, but I knew that at some point in the mail, here comes my grade card. So every day when I would see my dad get up to go check the mail, I would sort of live in that Schrodinger's cat situation where I'm like, either the rest of my day is screwed, and so is the rest of my week, and I'm going to reap what I've been sowing, or we're okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And usually he'd come back and there'd be no grade card. Once in a while there'd be one.
Yep.
And we'd have that situation. But it's like, because of that, genuinely psychologically, like as an adult, I have to make myself look at the mail.
Sure.
Like honestly, that's not an exaggeration. That is true. I do not. Mail to me that's the thing that's gonna ruin everything.
Yeah.
So I've set up this system where when I get home, I can't go inside till I look at the mail. I know how silly that sounds, but it's actually been like really useful. And I tell you that story to explain this. When you look at it, when you see the numbers, all of a sudden it's real and it's tangible and you know how bad it is. That's way, way more painful than just saying, I probably spend too much.
Yeah.
You know, I probably spend money I shouldn't. As soon as you're like, oh, I'm $600 in the red this month on stuff I don't even know what. I don't even know what. I $20'd myself to death here. You know, all of a sudden you recognize sort of the gravity of the mistakes that you've made, and it feels like a lot has to change. And so people will subconsciously avoid getting clear on things. You know, it's like I know I'm sort of overweight, but I don't weigh myself. It's like, okay, I know I'm sort of overweight. It's like, well, now I weigh myself every morning. I'm aware. I have to, like, once I'm clear on it, I can change things. But I think that people fear that level of clarity because then you will assign a real tangible number to it. Have you found that in your experience?
Oh yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
But those are the conversations that I have to have with people if they're wanting change. Now, not everybody wants change. I mean, they say they want change, but their actions will tell me what they want. Right. And so when I'm building into people and having conversations with them, I will present the facts and I'll say, here are steps to get clear. Here's what we need to do together. But I will not meet with them again until they've done the steps.
Yep.
Because what I have realized is that most people say they want something, but their actions don't prove it.
Yeah.
And I can only spend time with the people that are proving to me what they say they want.
Right.
And so, but everybody tries to avoid it. It's I was talking to somebody yesterday about my teenagers, right? They think their room is clean when the door is shut. Right?
Yeah.
And so the room, and I open up the door. Your room is not clean.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And that's what it is, man, I just have an opportunity to go open up the door for a lot of folks and have them look at the room. Right. And when we look at the room, sometimes there's shoes and there's what we used to have not hamsters, but rats.
Yeah.
Like not rats, like overrun, but pets.
Sure.
And so there was like the bedding all over the place and, they would feel overwhelmed about cleaning their room. And so I'd be like, just pick a category. Clothes. Now I'll pick the next category. Stuff, right?
Yeah.
Pencils and paper. Now what's the next category? Animals. What's the next category? And so just break down how to clean the room. So you're not cleaning the room, you're picking up clothes.
Yeah.
You're not cleaning the room, you're cleaning up the animal stuff, right?
Right.
So it's really just slowing down and finding, and I'll take this all the way back to finding that 1% improvement. That's it. That's all we need.
Yep.
1%.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I help people understand is you got to get the garbage out of your mind that keeps making you think and feel like you're not good enough.
Right. I feel like I could continue this conversation for 3 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
So I'll sort of head toward the direction of wrapping things up. First of all, what do you got going on / you're working on right now that you're excited about that people ought to be watching for?
Well, I just got done doing a overwhelm and burnout, depression, anxiety speech out, and I was a keynote speaker. So I look forward to doing more of that. So I've got that speech done. I've sent it out to a couple people just to see if they want somebody to come out and talk on that stuff, which has to do with a lot of what we're talking about like right now.
Yeah.
It's like reprogramming your mind. My wife and I, with our business, we're still expanding. So we have our healthy smoothie stores, and we've got a nutrition network around Topeka and Manhattan. We got one going out to Phoenix. But in reality, we always tell people, like, we're not really a shake. What we do is we pour love into every cup.
Yeah.
So our sole mission is to create a ripple effect of love, right? And so when we have that opportunity to build into people through our business and edify them and make them feel better for coming into our business and then sending them back to their coworkers or kids, that's our biggest impact. So the more we grow through our expansion, the further of the ripple effect of love we can do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we got going on right now. We're in the second 90-day plan of growth in our business. That we've been focusing on. So lots of meetings, lots of growth opportunities, lots of exhaustion, lots of late nights, lots of early mornings. But again, not working that 8 to 5 life doesn't mean that you're not working. It just means you're doing it differently, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I follow along with your shops on social media, and I tell you, there seems to be a wonderful community around this. It's like what you're saying doesn't sound at all like lip service to me. There's an enormous amount of sort of love and care and respect for everybody there. So, what's the name if people want to go?
Soulfire.
Soulfire. Okay, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, and then in the network we got Soulfire.
Yep.
So, and then we got North Nutrition, which is over here out north on North Topeka Boulevard. Then we've got Spark Nutrition. So North is ran by Steen, and again, these are all like what I would say they are owners. They have their own lease, but they follow the same model and heart of where we started at Soulfire, right? But they're inside of our network. And then you got Vicky out at Spark, Vicky and Dave. We got Lan, so we got Kelsey out there. She's from Maple Hill, so she started Lan. I say Lan, but it's called Little Apple Nutrition.
I see.
Out there, and so we keep on expanding. We got Top City Nutrition, which is just on the street here, which is owned by Michael, and so we've got this opportunity to really keep on building into other people. So it's good, But Soulfire is what I would say it was the anchor, where we kind of birthed the vision to others. Yeah.
If people have been loving what you're saying, which I imagine they are, and they wanted to know more or find you on social media, where can they look?
I've got some kind of iteration of Coach Blanco on Facebook and Instagram. Because you have to put the other little special characters or underlines or whatever in them.
Yeah.
I would highly suggest and just following my wife as well. So Evie Blanco, I don't remember what her specific handles are on her Facebook and Instagram. But mine usually has something to do with like Coach Blanco. Yeah. But yeah, just Evie and I've been more than posting on social media as far as like all the typing. I've been trying to be better at stories and reels. So that's all I've been doing for like the last 120 days. But Evie has been making some fantastic longer posts about what she's learning through reading and building into others and the impact that we want to make. So I always tell people to check out both of us.
Fantastic. All right.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add?
Here's one is that your text and your email is somebody else's to-do list for your life. So if you want to start programming your life, start there. Don't check your social media. Don't check your text. Don't check your email when you wake up in the morning because you're already following somebody else's agenda. So just leave it there.
Wonderful
And
advice.
that's what Brendan Burchard says. So
okay, well, sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right, Anthony. Thanks for coming in.
You bet.